The latest tech.
I'm Alexa. I can answer your questions.
Interviews.
And we are evolving, and we are seeing an amazing opportunity that is happening.
Accessibility.
Accessibility is one of our core values. It's even a part of our mission statement.
This is Double Tap TV.
Welcome to Double Tap TV. Thank you guys so much for being with us each and every single week. Thank you for emailing us, feedback at ami.ca, the email address for anything you want to use to get in touch with us, of course, on social media. If you're not already following us, go ahead and do so. It is at Double Tap Canada. And if you want to, on Twitter, use that hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap, and we'll get to your questions on lots of shows, maybe even this one. I am Mark Aflalo, Stephen Scott by my side. Stephen, this week we're talking all about ransomware, one of those buzzwords that I think probably fall into the realm of, metaverse, NFTs, but something that's a little bit scarier nonetheless.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a terrifying thing because a lot of people don't really understand how this works. Most people have heard of internet scams, maybe even phishing, right? That's phishing with a PH, to be clear. I only learned that recently because, I always heard phishing and I just thought of, fishing rods and sea and stuff, and that was all nice. But of course, it's horrible, the idea of getting an email through and then it turns out that, you've got an email from a company you think is reputable and then you realize the whole thing's a scam, and it's horrible. So, that's one aspect of the internet that's scary. But this where essentially, and we'll get into the detail of this, but ultimately something that takes your data, or someone that takes your data, and then essentially holds it ransom. That's terrifying.
Yeah, it is a little bit spooky. And you mentioned the word phishing, and that really, you joke about the fact that you thought it was, hook, line, kind of going for actual fish.
Exactly.
That's where it comes from, because really at the end of the day, these malicious people, the people with malintent, are doing just that. They're casting something out into the interwebs, and they're hoping that people, catch the line and get reeled in, and at the end of the day, give them a username or password that could give them the key to unlock all your personal information, maybe your banking. And I want to tell you a quick story about something that happened to me, Stephen, because it was a great learning point, and especially when, it's something that happens to someone like me who is, very savvy in this kind of realm. I'm very keen on watching, emails and making sure that links go to where they're supposed to. That's one of the identifying points that you want to do in an email is hover over a link and see, okay, is it actually going to PayPal's website? Is that actually Microsoft, or did they maybe register something like Microsoft with two different letters, which is a common practice among people who are trying to, go out and fish. And what happened to me, Stephen, was I guess years ago, a site was hacked and nothing really happened of it. And I got a notice saying the site was hacked, maybe change your password. And I did. But what happened is that this information stays on the internet for a long time, and it kind of gets circulated, and people can buy lists and they can use this. And sometimes they even use it 3 or 4 years later. And what happened is I got this email that said, "Hi, Mark Aflalo," and it said, "I'm emailing you at," and it inserted my email address, and I used your password, and it included a password, I guess, it got from that hack, and I've downloaded all this information. I've been watching you for the past 3 weeks, and all those bad sites that you were on, I recorded you, and if you don't, send money to this Bitcoin address, then I'm going to release it to all your friends and family. Now, this has happened before to my wife. She got something similar to that, and I looked at it, and it seemed interesting, but the password they told me was, it could have been something she used, but we weren't really sure. So we immediately took some action. So it caught me a little off guard. I'm like, wait a second, that's a password that I thought in my mind was fairly secure. Now, mistake number one, never reuse passwords. Mistake number one. And everybody does it. Yeah. I know we all do it because there's so many things that, use passwords. Yeah. So that was mistake number one. So it immediately caught my attention. I said, wait a second, this is kind of scary. The next thing that caught my attention was when I was going through my junk mail, I saw that there were 3 or 4 different sites, one of which was EA.com, Electronic Arts, some gaming sites, that someone was trying to recover my account, meaning they hit forgot password, they typed in my email address, and they tried to get into my account using that password. So clearly, not only was I being warned that something was going on, but someone did and was actively trying to get into accounts of mine. And that not only happened from EA, but a couple other sites. So I immediately said, okay, I use a password manager. I use a password manager called LastPass. I logged into LastPass. I looked at all my information. I said, okay, what sites out of the 500 sites that are listed here use that password or a variation of that password? And believe it or not, there were like 200 sites. There's only so much you can do to protect yourself. And if you don't adhere to good IT or online hygiene, meaning never reusing the same password, always using something generated, use a password manager, use multi-factor authentication, someone could have got into my bank accounts. And they could have easily spoofed my identity, and who knows how bad that could have gone. So it was a very, very big lesson for me.
And that's the thing. I mean, you're a guy who, you know your stuff around this. You know the scams. You know how it works. You understand the technology behind it all, and yet you were very close to being spoofed. And oftentimes, it's the grain of truth, isn't it? It's the grain of truth in there telling you that password, and you immediately looking at that and thinking, well, that was a password I used. So instantly, the email feels real. It feels like it's got something behind it. And I think that's the fear with a lot of people, and people a lot of people out there, frankly, who don't have a clue about this stuff, would be terrified and not know where to turn. And what do? Do you call the police?
Yeah, no, definitely. And we touched upon what ransomware is, but after we take a quick break, we're going to come back and Grant Hardy is going to join us. He's got a great segment for us, really explaining what ransomware is, where it started, and some tips of his own from his experience on how to avoid it. Plus, later on in the show, we're going to speak to an excellent gentleman whose life was dedicated or is dedicated to security. He's going to talk us through some different forms of ransomware and steps that we can take not only as people, but maybe our employers can take to help protect us before it even gets to that point. So do stick around. It is Double Tap TV with Stephen Scott and Mark Aflalo. When we come back, Grant Hardy is going to join us, and we're going to walk you through everything about ransomware.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit ami.ca/doubletap. This is Double Tap TV.
We're back on Double Tap TV talking all things ransomware, whether you like it or not. Thanks for being here again. If you want to get involved, the email address feedback@ami.ca. On Twitter and social media @DoubleTapCanada. Use that hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap. So we're talking all things ransomware this week. Still to come, Grant Hardy is on deck. He's going to walk us through what ransomware really is from his perspective. And later on in the show, an expert in the field helping us protect ourselves and maybe helping our employers keep us protected. Now, Stephen, we heard about a My Story. Have you had any brushes with, I guess, ransomware or phishing that you specifically have experienced that taught you a lesson, maybe?
Yeah, I did, and I don't think I'm alone in this. I mean, you've talked about your experience, and you know, I think we've all gone through this to some degree. I wasn't caught on this one, but I nearly was. I got an email telling me my Apple account was being suspended. Well, that would obviously shock anybody. Why would my account be being suspended? Go to this web address and, you know, it'll tell you all. Just put your details in. And at the time, I kind of got caught on the hop because I thought, okay, it's asking me to go to the Apple website. So I go to the Apple site. It seems to be perfectly similar to what the Apple website would be. And then I thought, I'm going to try something. Now, as a screen reader user, I have the ability to obviously listen, right? I'm listening to the text rather than reading it with my eyes. And when I actually looked at the web address that I'd been taken to, it wasn't apple.com, it was appie, appie.com. Now, visually, you would probably look at that and think, wow, I'm on apple.com. But they had actually taken that web address. So that's how they do it. That's partly how they do it. Again, it's that grain of truth, and it looks to most people the same, so therefore it could well be the same. And if I hadn't have been just a bit smarter there at that moment, I could have ended up putting in my details and probably locking up my Apple account, and who knows what else. Like you say, with identity theft going on, who knows what access they could have got.
They could have downloaded all your important apps.
Well, that's right. I mean, they could have downloaded those 2 apps I've bought in the past 10 years. Exactly.
Well, you know what? Double Tap TV's Grant Hardy is here, and he's got an explanation for us about ransomware and talk about some of his own little helpful tips to hopefully avoid it. Grant?
Hi, AMI Vancouver Bureau reporter and Double Tap contributor Grant Hardy talking about ransomware. It's one of the latest buzzwords in the tech industry, and it's a growing threat for any individual or business with devices connected to the internet. The term is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Criminals hold the data on your devices hostage, and they won't give it back unless you pony up an exorbitant amount of money. They may also threaten to leak your data, like private photos or messages, unless you pay up. How? Well, it turns out that powerful encryption that's usually used for good, to secure your data against an intruder who doesn't know your password or passcode, can also be used for criminal purposes. So in this case, your data gets locked up with a key that only the attacker knows, and if they do a successful enough job, then it's pretty much mathematically impossible to decrypt it. I mean, there are tools online that claim to help recover your data, but many are also there to trick you and get you to pay up for nothing. The only hope without a backup is getting in touch with a professional data recovery company. For individuals, this is devastating. Almost everyone says, I don't have any truly irreplaceable critical data, but most people are wrong. Baby pictures, medical records, schoolwork, and financials are just some of the things you can lose in a ransomware attack. And for businesses, it is a nightmare scenario of grinding to a halt as the company scrambles to retrieve critical business records. I'd like to talk about really 3 ways to mitigate against ransomware. 1, back up your personal data, and do it often. There are a plethora of options for backing up, but the built-in Windows Backup or macOS Time Machine tools will do just fine for people who don't regularly back up. If possible, buy 2 external hard drives. They don't even have to be top of the line, and swap them out so only one is connected to the computer at a time. This gives you an offline copy of your stuff in case your system is ever taken down. If backing up or syncing using the cloud, test out any features your cloud service has related to rewinding, rolling back, or undeleting or accessing previous versions of files and folders, because this may do in a pinch. Some services, including my favorite backup app, Arc Backup, let me lock my backups for a predetermined amount of time. So if a malicious actor tries to delete yesterday's backup, they will find that they don't have permission to do so. Secondly, practice good hygiene. That means the usual stuff. Be especially wary of clicking on unknown links, interacting with strange messages from people you don't know or haven't talked to in a long time, and resist offers that just seem too good to be true. Use a password manager. Even something like Chrome or iCloud Keychain's built-in password features are fine, and keep passwords random. Don't install unknown apps, especially when you're in a hurry or when you haven't researched the app in question. Lastly, it may be worth keeping some data that just absolutely can't leak offline, like on physical media or an encrypted volume that you only connect when you need to. Provided it's properly secured, you'll have one more defense against extortion. Criminals are always trying to stay one step ahead of us. With some simple, good tech habits, hopefully we can make ourselves a little less attractive targets to them. Good luck and stay safe.
After the break, someone who's been in this field for quite some time, actually his lifetime. He's going to talk us through identifying ransomware and what we can do to hopefully avoid it or at least deal with it when it happens. This is Double Tap TV. We'll be back in just a moment.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit ami.ca/doubletap. This is Double Tap TV.
We're talking all things ransomware this week on Double Tap TV. Thank you guys for being with us. Again, our email address, feedback@ami.ca. If you want to get in touch, let us know what your experiences were. Did you have a lesson, a brush with ransomware, or maybe phishing that you got caught or almost got caught? I'm curious to hear those stories. That can make for a fun show down the road. And of course, on social media, if you're not already following us, it's @DoubleTapCanada, and you can use that hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap. I am Mark Aflalo with Stephen Scott by my side, and I'd like to welcome our next guest, or our only guest this week. Dave Masson is the Director of Enterprise Security for Darktrace. Dave, thanks for being here this week. All I need, is someone else with a Scottish accent, but tell us about Darktrace first and what you guys do.
Okay, Darktrace, we're a cyber AI company. We use self-learning artificial intelligence to find threat on networks and to actually stop it. We've been doing this since 2013 when we came out with the idea that AI could actually be a very, very useful solution for dealing with cyber threat. You'll be well aware that most cyber tools, cyber solutions out there, they all exist based on the premise of what we call roles and signatures. They need to know about threat so they can find it and stop it. This is a case where you always need victims before you come up with solutions. And we decided that that really wasn't feasible going forward. There surely must be a way to find threat without knowing what the threat is. And that's what we do. We use self-learning AI to focus on the business, not the breach, to actually learn everything about an organization, all the devices, all the people in there, and then understand the pattern of life. And because the AI understands the pattern of life, it can see changes to that in real time. And if you get involved in a cyber attack at the very earliest stages in real time, you actually stop people from getting hacked in the first place.
Dave, great to hear another Scottish accent on here. It's about time, if you ask me. Dave, what got you into this business?
As you can tell by my face and my lack of hair, I'm a fairly old guy. And believe it or not, I've been in this world since the Cold War, so that shows you how long ago that is. And cyber's been around for a long time. Cyber was around long before the internet came about. And it's been a feature of my career, not all my career, but in and out all the time. It's a tool often used by threat actors to achieve what they want to do. And it's always fascinated me in the way that thanks to cyber and thanks to the internet, the bad guys don't have to be 6,500 miles away. They can literally be sitting on your router in your own home. And I find it fascinating that, that one, they can do that, but also the ways we can deploy and use to actually stop these threat actors from achieving their goals.
Are there things we can do to actually avoid being a target in the first place, or maybe protecting our data?
Yeah, the first thing to do is take a deep breath and realize we live in a big bad world and accept that something could well happen to your computer or to the network that you're responsible for. There are lots of things that people can do. One is be aware of the threat and check up on it. Good training for employees, that kind of thing, so people don't click on links or open up strange attachments, that sort of thing. And also to have some good technology. The other thing to realize is that ransomware, the actual encryption of your data, is in fact something that happens at the end of a longer process. Ransomware is really about an attack on your network, people getting into your network, spending time on your network, looking around on your network, and then ransoming, encrypting what they found. So the actual ransomware is the end of a long process. And what this means is there's several points before then where attackers could potentially be found. But some of the commonest things that people can do to protect themselves is, and they're oldies, but they're very much goldies, is guess what? Strong passwords. Stop using the same password for everything. Patch, update, update, update. When these things come out, there's a reason why they come out. It's because something is wrong. The manufacturer discovered it's wrong and they want to fix it for you. Apply those patches. And if you do things like two-factor or multi-factor authentication, you're just making it harder for the attackers to get onto your network in the first place. At the end of the day, they're out to make money. They don't want to waste time on something that they can't get into. And if you have some of these protections in place, they'll just move on. They won't touch you. They'll go on to somebody else.
Yeah, you know what, Dave? Come and get me. I've got nothing to hide. But look, okay, all right. Seriously, though, what about companies? What about IT departments, people who work in these areas? Obviously, they have to take this seriously. What can business and business leaders and the IT professionals do to safeguard their employees and indeed their own infrastructure?
Yeah, absolutely. There's two factors here. There's the human beings and there's the technology. You've got to support your human beings by giving them good information, adequate training. You've just described some of the training there. But you've also got to give them good technology. The scale of threat that we face from cyber attacks, not just ransomware, is it's so sophisticated, it's getting increasingly sophisticated, and it's very fast, in fact, moving at machine speed, if not faster. The human beings can't really deal with this themselves, so they need good technology. There's no point in pointing at human beings and saying things like, well, they're the weakest link in the chain, if you don't actually give them some help and you give them some good technology. So it's that combination, good training, good awareness, and good technology at the same time.
Stephen, those are some pretty good tips. I mean, if you're going to run an IT department, if you're looking after employees, really, it's more than just, you have to educate people. I don't know about you, but when I've worked at different companies, they've put us through monthly trainings, and they try to help us identify phishing emails. They've even, planted emails. Thankfully, those instances, at least in my case, I've done quite well. I think I've scored like a 99%. But I'm sure there are people that really can't spot them, and I get it, because they make it really hard.
They do, but I think there's one defining factor of a lot of them, and it is either to take you to a website to put in your username and details. I'm always very cautious about that. And downloading files, or, there's one that was doing the rounds recently about open up, there's a voicemail here. If you click on this button, it'll take you to the voicemail. And you think, well, why would I get a voicemail by email? If you don't normally get a voicemail by email, why would it suddenly just start happening? So it's those kind of questions you need to ask yourself. It's one of those stop and think moments. Because I think ultimately you're right. In business, there's a lot of work being done to try and safeguard the company as well as the employees. But also at home, I think that's where a lot of these attacks tend to happen. That's where the real stuff goes on. And people are on their own. They don't know. They don't understand. So they just think, oh, well, it's an email, and it happens all the time. So it's not an age thing. It's not an ability thing. It happens, as we've said, to all of us.
One of my takeaways really at the end of the day, especially based on my own experiences, is use a password manager. Let these services, they don't cost money. There are lots of free password managers out there. They're built into the Chrome browser. Apple has, iCloud Keychain. They also let them generate the password for you. Don't try to remember all these things. Use one service. That way it's one password for you to remember, and then you can go in and have access to everything. And practice good IT hygiene. Like literally go in and change passwords regularly. I know it's a pain in the butt. I know people hate, every 45 days my IT department makes me change my password. But think about what's at risk. If you work for a company that handles purchases and has credit card information and has other people's personal information, imagine if you were one of those customers. That's dangerous. You don't want people going around saying, hey, I'm Stephen Scott, give me his SIM card.
Yeah.
Absolutely dangerous. So that's my takeaway. What's yours?
Well, I agree with all that, and I think ultimately it's personal responsibility on all of us, right? We're the first to complain when something happens. As soon as you hear about a data leak, you think, someone's not done it properly and something should be done. But actually, what are we doing as individuals? What should we do? And in employment, it is really important to follow the rules. But I think the training is key, and I really am glad to hear from Dave today that is going on in businesses. It wasn't happening much in the business world when I left it and started doing this. People call it work. People judge that differently. But I think that now in IT departments they are getting wise to this, and employees need to get wise too.
Well, thank you, Stephen, for being here each and every single week. Special thanks to Grant Hardy and to Dave Masson for joining us on this week's edition of Double Tap TV. If you've got a story to tell, let us know. I'm curious to know if you've got any tips or tricks that you might have learned in your own experience, maybe in your own workplace, that's worked out for you and other employees. Do let us know. Send us an email to feedback@ami.ca or reach out on social media. It's at Double Tap Canada with the hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap. Thanks for being here. We'll speak to you again next week.
Hosted by Mark Aflalo and Stephen Scott. Editing Jordan Steves and Mark Aflalo. Voiceover Anna Vicino. Integrated Described Video Specialist Ron Rickford. Coordinating Producer Jennifer Johnson. Director Production Kara Nye. Director Programming Brian Perdue. VP Content Development and Programming John Melville. President and CEO David Arrington. Copyright 2022 Accessible Media Inc.